For the last 3 years, we have been living inside a rocket ship. Every 6 months, the models got smarter. They went from writing awkward, stumbling poetry to coding entire applications from a single prompt, from generating blurry, nightmarish blobs to producing photorealistic Hollywood trailers that fool the eye. And somewhere along the way, we internalized a quiet, dangerous assumption. We assumed that this curve, this relentless vertical march towards something that looks like godlike intelligence, would just continue forever, up and to the right, into infinity. But there is a problem, a silent mathematical brick wall waiting at the end of this road. And here is the twist that almost nobody is talking about. The AI doesn't need more chips. It doesn't need more electricity. Not yet. It is running out of something far more fundamental. It is running out of words. It is running out of knowledge. The raw fuel of this entire revolution is disappearing beneath our feet, even as we demand more and more of it. This is the story of the data wall. And it is the reason why 2026 might be remembered not as the year AI took over the world, but as the year the rocket stopped accelerating and started coasting. Now let's talk about the math of exhaustion. It's not as complicated as rocket science, but the conclusion is just as unforgiving. For years, we've assumed the internet is this infinite library, a bottomless well of human chatter, literature, and argument. But the researchers at Epoch AI, they've actually measured the well, and they've discovered something unsettling. The total stock of high-quality, human-written language available on the public web, the stuff actually worth learning from, clocks in at roughly 300 trillion tokens. And if that word token feels abstract, just think of it as the crumbs of our language. A token is about 3/4 of a word, 300 trillion of them. That's the entire recorded corpus of digital humanity. It sounds like a lot, until you realize how hungry these models have become. The frontier giants you've heard of, the latest iterations of Claude, Gemini, and GPT-5, they've already devoured between 15 and 20 trillion tokens of that library just to get to where they are today. But here's the thing about the scaling hypothesis. The appetite doesn't just grow, it doubles. Some estimates for the kind of model arriving in 2026 suggest it will need upwards of 60 to 100 trillion tokens. Do you see the cliff we're racing toward? We're physically running out of new human-made material to feed the beast. The cupboards are getting bare. And as if that weren't enough, there's a darker, more ironic twist to this famine. Just as we're scraping the bottom of the human barrel, the internet is flooding with the indigestible leftovers of the machines themselves. We call it AI slop. It's the grey goo of the information age. For every brilliant essay a human writes, 1,000 bots are churning out drivel. If you scrape the web today for training data for tomorrow's model, you're not getting the wisdom of the crowd anymore. You're getting the undigested vomit of the previous model. It's a phenomenon researchers call model autophagy disorder, a self-consuming loop. You can't grow wiser by reading your own diary over and over. The ink just gets fainter with every turn of the page. Now at this point, the tech optimists usually lean back in their chairs and say, all right, fine, the open web is drying up. But we still have the good stuff, the paywalled content, the academic journals locked behind university logins, the private Slack messages of Silicon Valley engineers, the corporate emails. Surely that's where the next feast lies. And they're right, that data exists. But there's a vast and treacherous difference between existence and access. Because while the AI labs were busy scraping the free web, the legal landscape was quietly shifting beneath their feet. The mantra of Silicon Valley used to be move fast and break things, break. By 2025 and 2026, that has been replaced by a new, more cautious slogan, move carefully and lawyer up. Major copyright holders, newspapers, image libraries, book publishers, they've woken up to a profound realization. Their century-old archives, those dusty digital basements full of fact-checked journalism and editorial precision, are the new oil fields of the AI age. And they are no longer willing to let anyone drill for free. You've seen the deals. Reddit signed a $60 million a year agreement with Google. News Corp, the empire behind the Wall Street Journal, reportedly locked in a deal with OpenAI worth over $250 million. These numbers are staggering, but here's the catch. They are one-time limited licenses. They don't grant eternal access to the fire hose, and many other publishers, most notably the New York Times, have looked at the offer and chosen the nuclear option instead. Lawsuits, cease and desist letters, a legal barricade. What this means in practice is brutally simple. The highest quality data on Earth is being walled off. The meticulously edited, fact-checked, nuanced prose that makes AI models sound intelligent rather than unhinged is being walled off. AI companies can no longer just roll up with a digital vacuum cleaner and suck up the internet. They have to knock on the door, sit at the negotiation table, and pay a king's ransom for a seat at the feast. And the price of admission? It's skyrocketing by the day. But this isn't just a financial problem. It's a velocity problem. Even if you have the billions to spend, the legal friction slows everything down. Every contract, every lawsuit, every negotiation adds months to the data pipeline. And that pipeline needs to be accelerating just as the models are reaching their hungriest phase. The law, in its slow and deliberate wisdom, has become an unexpected break on the exponential curve. So if the real internet is tapped out, if the well of human writing is running dry, and the premium stuff is locked behind legal vaults, where does the data come from? The answer being whispered in the hushed corridors of Silicon Valley boardrooms is deceptively simple. We'll make it up. They call it synthetic data, and make no mistake, it is one of the highest stakes gambles in the history of computing. The idea is elegant on its surface. You take a massive, powerful model, something like GPT-5 at the peak of its powers, and you set it to work generating trillions of words of practice material. Math problems with step-by-step solutions, coding challenges with verified outputs, fictional conversations between imaginary people. You create an infinite textbook written by the machine for the machine, and then you train a new generation of models on that homework, and in certain domains, this works brilliantly, almost miraculously. You remember AlphaGo, the system that crushed the world champion at the ancient game of Go? It became superhuman by playing millions of games against itself. In a closed universe, a synthetic loop is a rocket booster. Even in coding, models are already using synthetic data to verify whether the code actually runs before it ever touches a human eye. In these tidy, logical worlds, the machine can teach the machine. But language, our language, is not a game of Go. Language is messy. It breathes. It carries within it the subtle weight of cultural context and the barbed edge of sarcasm. You cannot simulate the tremor in a widow's voice or the absurd joy of an inside joke between old friends. That stuff doesn't compile. And here's what the research is showing. When you train a model exclusively on synthetic text, something strange begins to happen. The models start to drift. They become verbose in a hollow way, saying more but meaning less. They grow repetitive. They slowly lose the long, thin tail of rare and precious knowledge that made them feel almost magical. They lose their edge. It is the AI equivalent of inbreeding. The gene pool of ideas gets shallower with every generation. The prose becomes florid and empty. The facts begin to curdle into confident-sounding nonsense. It turns out that teaching yourself from your own reflection is a fast path to forgetting who you really are. So, does all of this mean that AI progress simply stops? That we slam into the data wall in 2026 and the whole enterprise grinds to a halt? No, that's not what's coming. But it does mean that the nature of progress is about to change, profoundly. The age of simply making the chatbot bigger, of pouring more and more text into a larger and larger neural network, that age is ending. The easy oil has been pumped. And now, the frontier is shifting to entirely new continents of information. The next leap in intelligence won't come from reading Reddit threads. It will come from watching YouTube. Think about it. Video data is the last great untapped reservoir on this planet. Every frame contains a dense, almost impossibly rich stream of information about our world. How objects fall, how light bends, how a stranger's face shifts from suspicion to warmth in the space of a single smile. Understanding physics, human body language, and cause and effect comes from seeing, not just reading about it. Google's Gemini is uniquely positioned here for one simple reason. They own the world's video library. That archive is a textbook on reality itself, and it has barely been opened. And then, beyond even that, there is the final frontier, the one that renders the data wall almost irrelevant. It's called embodied AI, robots, machines with limbs and sensors, stumbling around in the real world. Here's the beautiful thing about a robot. You don't need to scrape the internet for training data anymore. You just let it loose in a warehouse for 10,000 hours. It will learn what gravity is by dropping a box. It will learn friction by slipping on a wet floor. It will learn the physics of the universe not from words on a screen, but from the bruising, beautiful, analog feedback of reality itself. The text may run out, but the world is infinite. And the next chapter of intelligence will be written not in tokenized words, but in pixels, sound waves, and the cold, hard weight of a box that refuses to be lifted the wrong way. The data wall is not the end of AI. Let me be clear about that. It is simply the end of the easy era. From 2020 to 2025, AI companies were drilling for oil that was bubbling right out of the ground. They could just show up with a shovel and strike black gold. Now they have to drill deep offshore in treacherous waters, or learn to build something far more complex, a fusion reactor. The game has changed, and this constraint, this pressure, it will do what constraints always do. It will separate the winners from the pretenders. It will force a wave of innovation not in scale, but in efficiency. The next breakthrough won't be a model that's 1,000 times bigger. It will be a model that's 1,000 times smarter with less data, less compute, less waste. The AI that writes your email in 2027 might not be 10 times better at composing Shakespearean sonnets, but it might understand the world 10 times better, because it finally learned to see it, to hear it, to inhabit something closer to our own messy, sensory reality. The wall is real. We are not debating whether we will hit it. We already are right now in this moment. The only question that remains is, what waits on the other side? Now, I want to pause here and offer a small but necessary caveat. Everything you've just heard is not gospel. They represent a synthesis of current research, publicly available trends, and my own analytical perspective on where this trajectory appears to be heading. The future is being written in real time by thousands of engineers and researchers in rooms we will never see. The only thing we can offer you is an honest, rigorous, and I hope thought-provoking interpretation of the data we do have. But that uncertainty, that's precisely why we keep watching, isn't it? Thanks for spending this time with me. If you want to go deeper, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.